Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to In Bed with Kate. And today's episode is very personal, I would say, because historically there were some narcissists in bed with Kate, but in the recent years we see more and more of them on TV, in the White House, among our circles. So that's why I studied narcissism more and more, and then I realized how deep this issue actually runs and how many of the best dicks come with the mental health disclaimer. So that's why I invited Susanna to unpack the concept of narcissism and other mental disorders that you don't want to date in your love life. So, Susanna, please introduce yourself. And I'm so excited for this conversation.
Hello, I'm Susanna Weiss. I'm an author, a therapist, and a sex educator. Excited to be talking to you.
Thank you so much for coming here today, especially in the times like this. It's Friday 13th, a lot of uncertainty going on. And thank you for your mission, helping people to, having it together, right, mentally. Do you think that mental health is on decline? And when do you think it started? Has it started from COVID? Like, do you see more therapy clients for your couples counseling or just regular sessions?
Yeah, there has been a decline in mental health since COVID, more anxiety, more depression, a general sense of disconnect that people are feeling. A lot of complaints about dating since COVID. It's almost like people never recovered from having their nervous system so cut off from other people's because we're so wired to co regulate. So, all of the above, and also just more awareness of mental health issues, more awareness, less stigma around therapy. So, yes, both more mental health issues and more people seeing therapists for sure.
Yeah, and the statistics tells us that 59 million of American people have been prescribed some kind of medication from the mental health conditions, and 20% of American adults are going to therapy. And I go into therapy myself, and I truly believe that, guys, if we have doctors for everything else. We have doctors for intimate parts, we have doctors for our digestive system. So it's good that we also have doctors for our brain, for our head. And yeah, there is nothing shameful about being in therapy and working on yourself. That's for sure. Okay, so here is the thing. I have dated a few people with like really bad mental health disorders, if you will. Could you please tell me, in your opinion, out of like, let's say, psychopath, bipolar, sociopath, narcissist, who is the most dangerous person to date?
In terms of danger, I would have to say those with antisocial personality disorder, what we would call psychopaths or sociopaths, are the most physically dangerous because those are generally people with a history of actually committing crimes, who are actually murderous, who may actually physically abuse people. Narcissists are more likely to mentally abuse people. Not that there is not a trend of physical abuse, but in terms of danger, I'd have to go with antisocial.
Basically, narcissists are not as dangerous in terms of like physical harm, right? But in terms of emotional abuse, they still kind of are, right? Or
Yeah, I would say narcissists are almost always emotionally abusive. They often are fighting a lot, yelling, talking down to people, diminishing their partner, minimizing their opinion, gaslighting them. Those are standard narcissistic behaviors. So it's very difficult to have a healthy relationship with a narcissist.
do you encounter like more and more people who end up in narcissistic relationship or become victims of narcissistic abuse? Because I was just wondering, simply because like 3 years ago, I remember when I was sharing with my friends and like people I know, my family, about my experience dealing with a person that I was in love with. And some people would tell me, oh my gosh, like he's a narcissist, like you got to drop him like right now, right? but I didn't know what narcissist even was, right? And I was so in love that I didn't really want to dive into that because I didn't want to admit that he was that. Could you please explain me what is the difference between the person who is a narcissist and who doesn't understand what he is doing to other people, that he's hurting them, from a person who is just confident or self-absorbed or just extravagant?
There is definitely a spectrum, as with any mental illness. It's not super common to have full fledged narcissistic personality disorder. About 1% to 2% of people have that, where they have a sense of grandiosity, think they're the most important person on earth, they're the best. And if you disagree with them, you're the worst. They don't empathize or they have a lot of trouble empathizing. So you could describe a lot of people that way, but there is a spectrum where maybe 1% to 2% of people have all those characteristics, and like it's very difficult to change. And then there's a gradient of people who have some of those characteristics, usually due to trauma, usually because they were put down themselves by their parents or someone in childhood, and they might be manipulative around things like money, around things like telling their partner their opinions wrong. They might be like a little bit on the narcissist spectrum. And I think that's why a lot of people are now saying my ex is a narcissist or my partner's a narcissist, because there's just so much awareness and people are picking up on those traits. Um, yeah, there is a wide range of people. Some of them can look at themselves and actually change those behaviors, and for some, it would really take years of therapy.
Yes, basically, narcissistic traits, it's not a diagnosis, right? It's just something that you can work on in your character, in your the way you treat people, the way you behave. But how do we actually spot like the narcissist who is never gonna be there for you? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, so those things like manipulative with your money or gaslighting and things like that, they are common for many different personality disorders, I think, and many different types of people in general. But I'm sure because, like, okay, so I would never diagnose people like that, right? Without like actually having a psychiatrist exam, if you will. But for example, a person who always needs to see themselves in a mirror or film themselves, right? So they are not making any content out of it. They just so obsessed with looking at themselves. Like, I'm serious. Like, this is what I was dealing with at some point, for example. First, I was thinking that maybe the person is doing it to turn this into content of some kind, but actually, no. He was just filming it just to film himself, just to see himself on his screen. Okay, let me portray you some traits or some signs that from my personal experience I realized that, okay, this kind of people we can certainly see that they are narcissists. First of all was that, right? So always filming himself during sex. Also, here is the most interesting part because a lot of them have hypersexuality, right? And if you have a high libido and you meet the partner who has such a high sex drive and such a horny imagination, of course, it's very easy to get hooked on that. With someone who works in this industry, right? Of course, not too many people surprise me in terms of doing something, crazy in bed. So that's why it's called In Bed with Kate. But when the person would move mirrors at every hotel room, like, I'm serious, he would literally detach the mirror from the cabinet and to put it right next to the bed so he could see himself having sex with me while he is also filming himself having sex with me, and he is streaming from his phone to the
Wow.
TV so that he can see it in every corner himself having sex with me. So is that person a narcissist?
Wow, that person's an exhibitionist. It could be a narcissist. I think in the bedroom, signs of narcissism would be pushiness, disrespect for boundaries. They could very well be sexually abusive. And just often narcissists, it's actually they make for very bad sexual partners because they're really all about themselves, and they might actually quote unquote forget what your boundaries are or what your desires are. They might actually I don't want to give examples from my own life, but like you might need to keep reminding them about things like safer sex because they like forget whatever is not convenient for them. So all of the above, yes.
Yeah, so your boundaries are constantly getting tested when you are dealing with a narcissist. That's 100%. And they would never like really ask about your boundaries. And if you tell them about them, then they somehow become even like offended, and you become the one to blame for this kind of conflict or situation, whatever it is, comes out of this negative emotions they have.
They tend to rewrite history, which is a really dangerous thing in relationships, especially sexually relationships. Like they might say something like, I want to be in a relationship with you. And then you'll say, okay, then I guess we're in a relationship. Then they'll be like, no, I meant like some kind of relationship, like a friendship, like, or, they'll twist your words. And
100%.
yeah, and in sex, they might say like, "Oh, I forgot you didn't wanna do that," or I thought you meant this other thing when you said you didn't want to do that." They're very manipulative, so it's definitely sign to stop having sex with that person.
That's the hardest part also, For a very long time, I thought that my best sex was with narcissist, right? And I didn't know what to do about it because literally he made me believe that how he called it, you married my dick, right? So we were engaged. So he met my family, and like it was getting pretty serious. Like, so basically he would go like 2 weeks, everything was perfect, right? So it was like highs were very high and lows were very low. And this hot and cold pattern, yes, not only with people that they love and people, their relationship with everybody, with their parents, with their friends. But anyhow, yeah, so basically twisting the words and saying that you said something or you did something that you didn't do make you feel at some point that you might be going crazy, right? So you start to question your own reality. And this is a very dangerous territory because unfortunately, during sex, there is so much energy exchange. There is so much we take on ourselves. And it's so hard to really look at this from the perspective of an outside person, right? So when you are inside of the situation, you might have a feeling that something is wrong, but you can't really like break it down like this analytically. And they also have such a charisma and magnetism that sometimes it can take a very long time to figure that out.
To figure out that someone's a narcissist.
Yeah, because you are under their charm, you are under
Mhm.
their magnetism.
Yeah, often narcissists really make you feel like you are in the wrong, and that's really dangerous. That often you will want to bring up an issue and then you feel like you need to apologize. That is a classic narcissist trend that they hurt you and you try to say it, and then they yell at you or get mad at you just for saying it. And then you want to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry." They might say something like, we have a really good connection. Why do you have to ruin it?" Or "It's such a nice day. Do you really have to bring up something dark right now?" And then you feel bad. And that's like the most dangerous thing in relationships. I would say that's a way to know if your partner's narcissism is just like a few traits or really full fledged narcissism you can't deal with, is what happens when you try to talk about it.
When I lived with another person, the second one had the psychiatrist exam, but there it was like bipolar, borderline, and something else. But before I found out about all of that he had, he made me think that I was the crazy one. So I hired a
Yeah.
therapist in the first place to find out whether I was crazy or not.
Wow.
And then my therapist told me, you know what, kid? Like, you are perfectly fine, but there is a problem. You live with a crazy person who makes you believe that you are the crazy one.
Yeah, exactly. That's their goal. That's intentional. Because if you feel like the crazy one, you can't hold them accountable.
But is it really like intentional, or they just don't understand what they're doing? Because, for example, someone who is bipolar, right? He will don't remember sometimes what he did, right? It's like two different personalities, or maybe more.
Yeah, they do understand what they're doing, but if they come from a family of narcissists, often they think it's normal. So they usually know they're manipulating you, but they may actually think that's a normal thing to do, especially if they grow up with parents who were narcissists or siblings or anyone else influential. They usually do know what they're doing, but they might think that that's just how people get what they want.
But what do you think causes narcissism in the first place? Because I hear more and more about parents, right? And parents sometimes might not even realize that they are also narcissists and they never work through that. But are narcissists born, made, or are they just
Mm.
traumatized people?
They're usually traumatized people. There's a slight genetic component, but it's usually they're made to feel small, so they get very big. That's usually the pattern, is that there's actually a deep, deep insecurity within them. They actually think they're the worst, and that's why they have to say they're the best to overcompensate. So it could be emotional abuse from a parent. It could be maybe they were bullied in school, or maybe, no one thought that they were pretty in school. So now they have to like be the most beautiful or something. It's usually overcompensation for something that happened to them that was traumatizing, and they can't get in touch with those feelings of pain, so it becomes a part of their personality that they just become so big and so dominant that nobody can get to them or can hurt them, supposedly, but usually it does hurt everyone involved.
But feeling small, that's one thing, right? But not having empathy and not being able to feel that you hurt people, this is something that I don't know, for me, like from what I read, also seemed like a defect that some people are just born with.
There is a genetic component to the lack of empathy. It but there isn't a complete inability to empathize like there is with, say, antisocial personality disorder. It's more like they have blocked off that ability because there's something very triggering or traumatizing about acting on it. So they just close themselves off.
How about people, because I also came across this opinion that seemed to be very interesting to me, that this is has something to do with demonic possessions, even in some cases, in some extreme cases, maybe. I don't know, like let's for example take a look P. Diddy, right? And what people say about his eye, right? So the way he looks at you. And I know this kind of site, like I've seen it before. I've seen it before in people who are in this bad state when they're psychopath or narcissist or whatever. And yeah, like they can even change in the way their face looks, their facial expressions, how they
Mhm.
look at you. Sometimes you wouldn't even like recognize the person you were with before, or you are not
I
a
hadn't
big
heard
believer in this.
I hadn't heard specifically of that. That makes sense that it could be a very, advanced form of manipulation to have specific facial expressions or almost personas you put on. The demonic possession account is interesting. I would like to
Yeah.
think that all we gotta do is exorcise the demons and they'll be gone.
A lot of people actually, even people who are parents of the narcissist, sometimes also have this feeling that it might be something more superficial than just mental disorder. But I don't know, maybe we will study this more. I'm just saying that this is what I have learned from my deep dive into narcissism from different standpoints, from the like famous people, people I know, some literature, even Reddit, and people who dealt with them in real life. So I don't know, but something to definitely think about. Okay, by the way, another reason why I brought this up, because a lot of narcissists have difficult relationship with the God. So like they can be super religious, and then all over a sudden they don't need religion anymore, they don't need God, they don't need church, right? So with my narcissist, he could, for example, first not respect my boundary, like not having strap on sex, right? He would still like bring me to the store, okay, we are doing this, and obviously I know how all of those things work, and I want to give you this experience even though I'm not the one who would initiate this. And then the next thing the next thing you know, a day later he would go, this is a sin, you are a sin. I'm going to the church, right? Then 3 months later, oh, this church brainwashed me. Oh, they brainwashed. What do I do? Like I lost everything because they brainwashed me. And
Mm.
then again, so like I mean, it's been going on for, for quite some time, and she still haven't figured this out. So that's why I was also thinking like maybe there is something from other dimensions. I don't know. But
A
anyhow,
lot of narcissists think they are God. Maybe they do play God in people's lives.
oh yeah, like yeah. Sometimes in the third stage would be when he would tell people who are religious that he is the God, not their God. So, what are the early signs that you are dating a narcissist that don't apply to other types of personalities? Maybe something that is more specific for narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah, you may have many quote unquote miscommunications that aren't really miscommunications. They're just the other person not listening to you or not respecting your wishes. So, for instance, they may shrug off if you say something like, I'm open to being non monogamous, but I'm really not open to you getting back with your ex. And then they'll get back with the ex and be like, but you said you're open to me being non monogamous. So what's the big deal? Or there's just a general a fixation on trying to get what they want, almost like they're trying to find loopholes, almost like they're arguing for their own side as opposed to seeing your side. There might be very frustrating arguments where they fixate on the language you're using and how they can tear you down rather than actually listening to you and hearing your feelings and honoring them. Um, there's often manipulation around money, manipulation around, well, I don't have a job as good as yours, so you should be paying for this, or, you're whatever the excuse is, you're privileged already, so you shouldn't have trouble giving me money. Or what's another good example? They may just not see your side in an argument. Even if your side is plainly obvious, they're just so focused on shooting you down that they don't actually empathize with you. And it's like very hurtful because the goal should be to always help each other see eye to eye and find compromises and really like get on the same page, but they're not interested in that. They're interested in having their own way. And if that means tearing you down, then they will.
Okay. How about dangerous behavior? For example, the ones that I encountered, and I also read on Reddit that a lot of people mention that as something that definitely applies to people who are narcissists, not just the traits. Dangerous behavior in the sense, for example, fast driving, or
Mm.
I don't know, taking the boat out when it's a storm, right? Or things of that nature. Would you consider it also a sign?
Yeah, that ties to the sense of grandiosity that narcissists have. Like, I own this road, so I should be able to drive however fast I want, or I own the sky, so I should be able to take my boat out in any weather. Just a refusal to accept that anything doesn't revolve around you.
So it's either like legal trouble or financial trouble, but they end up always being in trouble. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Um, or trying to get other people in legal trouble.
Okay. I
Like
mean,
they might
do they do it intentionally, or it's just like people who are close to them just getting affected this way?
do what intentionally?
Do they try to create legal troubles for other people intentionally?
I've known of many narcissists to threaten people, and the law is sometimes used as a way to do so, even if it's an empty threat. Like, if you try to talk to me again, I'm going to get a restraining order against you. Or if you,
Exactly. Oh my gosh, this look. Sorry for interrupting you, but literally, when I opened the court system and I put his name in there, it was 5 pages. Every second court case was restraining order. Him against somebody or somebody against him, but it was just crazy. I have never seen anything like that before.
and they think they're right, even if they have no case.
Even though I knew about all those things for such a long time, I kept coming back because I had this traumatic bond, right? This is how it's called, trauma bond.
Trauma bonding, yeah.
Yeah. So, from my understanding, because you have this cold and hot patterns, what's called the cold shoulder or whatever it's called, cold shoulder pattern. No? Okay. Anyways, no, never mind. I kept coming back because, from my understanding of like how our body works, we get used to this serotonin and then cortisol levels that you have spikes of during the relationship with him or during the breakup. and your body gets addicted to this swings. Is that the explanation?
Yeah, there's a lot of people get into this mode where they get addicted to another person, and it's almost like withdrawal when you break up with the person, and then it's like you are going through drug withdrawal. You're constantly thinking about them, craving them, crying them a mess. And that's why a lot of people get hooked on relationships with narcissists because w they know how to be very charming, they know how to build people up when they can, and then when you leave that person, it's devastating, they make you feel real and that this happens in any relationship really that, if you break up with them, you just feel like you are, a drug addict who just has been deprived of the drug, and so that can lead to this on and off thing, and, narcissists often have a way of hooking people back in, of luring them back in with charm, with praise, and then doing the same things all over again, and then you have to, like, go through withdrawal all over again, and it just people need to know not to stay friends with their ex, reach out to their ex, do anything like that if that's an issue, reach out to them on social media, even look them up, because then you never get out of that cycle.
Yeah, because energetically, then you will keep giving in there, right?
Yeah, a lot of people get into that situation, and it
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, many times I said, okay, this is the last time. This is the last time. It's never gonna happen again, right? But the first year, I kind of like thinking, okay, maybe he has narcissistic traits. The second year, I was sure, yes, he probably does have narcissistic traits, but I didn't want to learn more about it because I was afraid. I was afraid to face the reality, right? But then after the very last time, one of my friends, when I was telling him I'm deep into this shit again and now it's over and I feel bad and blah blah. And my friend has a ADHD, so he has a very special kind of brain, right? In the way it works. And he goes, Kate, I heard about this person for so long. And at this point, I really need physical appearance reference to really understand who the we are talking about. And he goes, what about this episode of Dr. Phil where his family and him were the main guests? And I knew that this episode was somewhere, right? I knew that it happened like long time ago when he was like 20 something, right? Like more than 15 years ago. But I never watched it because again, I was also afraid, right? Because like his behavior during this relationship with me, I could explain, okay, like maybe he was stressed because he was going like through the divorce and this and that. So that was all like happening at the same time. But I knew that when I watch it, I will have all the answers, and I will have to face this reality. I still tried to find it, but I just never was able to find it. And then my friend with ADHD decided, okay, I'm gonna find it no matter what. So he spent a few hours talking to AI and looking everywhere because we didn't know how it was called either. We didn't know the name of the episode. And then he finally found it. And then, this house of cards just fell. It's just, yeah. So then I saw that, first of all, the person was like that when he was 20 something, right? So it's not about the bad timing, it's about the person. And then I saw how he treated his parents because that was the whole point of the episode, right? So his mother wanted him to move out. He didn't want to move out. And he was basically, poisoning the life and the marriage of his parents when he was already a grown up man. They invited Dr. Phil to figure this shit out. And Dr. Phil, after spending some time with their family, he started from, I have never seen anything like that before, and I've been doing this for 15 years. So, and then, yes, basically, first of all, I saw the comments that would say, oh my gosh, like he has evil eye, or oh my gosh, this guy will never find a girlfriend, right? And I'm like reading this. And then when he said something about, like, I don't have to respect my parents, I don't have to respect anybody. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking like, how the hell I didn't find this earlier. Yeah, so that's a funny story, but again, that's all about the magnetism, right? So I'm a very analytical person and I usually feel when something is off, but I could not feel it through this magnetism.
Interesting. Yeah, you can be blinded, especially when none of us know what we're doing in relationships, especially in early relationships. We're like, is this normal? I know people, it's normal to have a conflict. So then they'll kind of take advantage of that and be like, yeah, well, everyone fights. And it's really confusing.
Yeah, but not everyone has 5 pages of restraining orders like that. That's someone who is definitely a narcissist. So, is the best sex always with crazy ones, or not? Because, like, I just wanna hear your perspective on that.
It's interesting. Sometimes if you slightly hate your partner, it adds more passion. So they do not need to be a narcissist for that. I think passion makes for good sex. I think if there is a willingness to speak openly, to argue if that is what you need to do or to say how you feel, I think you can get the same chemistry some people describe with toxic people by just being really open with your feelings and letting your partner know when you're mad at them. And, that could be another way to create passion that is not dating toxic people.
Hypersexuality in general is more common among those men who do have some issues, or it's not necessarily related.
A lot of narcissists do use sex for self-esteem boost or confidence boost or validation. So it is, yes, compulsive sexual behavior is more common among narcissistic people. So that is a pull that some people feel. Um, but the pull they're really feeling can be obtained with someone who is not so poisonous. At least I'd like to think.
Yeah, because like one thing is hypersexuality is also about how often, how long you can engage in some sexual acts, right? So, I mean, just on the physical level, it has to be a different kind of like, I don't know, body genetics to have this hypersexuality so that you can like have sex for hours, days, and when you are not a teenager. Or are those people just sex addicts? Or is it like something related to their testosterone levels that are higher than average? Or
Yeah, so sex addict is a pretty controversial term. A lot of people in the mental health field don't actually believe in the term because sex does not affect the brain like an addictive substance. So usually if someone identifies as a sex addict, if you go deeper, they often actually have anxiety or depression or self-esteem issues or something else that's causing compulsive sexual behavior or compulsive porn use. Once you deal with that underlying issue, they're not actually addicted to sex. So just have to clarify that is a controversial term a bit. There is like, uh, yeah, as I said, people with narcissistic personality disorder or with antisocial personality disorder or borderline. A lot of the personality disorders are correlated with compulsive sexual behavior, and often that can be alleviated by addressing the underlying issue. It's not necessarily a problem, the sexual behavior itself. Like if someone treats a mental health issue and they still want to have a ton of sex all the time and it's not hurting them, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It really depends on how it affects them and how it affects their partner.
yeah, I would never would label sex addict on somebody who just loves sex and has a lot of it, but as long as it doesn't interrupt with your everyday life and your duties, what's wrong about it, right? Okay. So another question that I have is, how does a narcissist experience love and intimacy, and if they are even capable of it? If we say that they are not capable of empathy whatsoever, are they just pretending during this love bombing stage, or what is going on?
Are they just pretending? There is a tendency to love bomb, a tendency to do the courtship tactics, the pickup artist tactics that sort of will convince the other person to be with you, which is interesting. There is that dichotomy, that contradiction that often there's a lot of insecurity among narcissists. And so they engage in putting on airs and narcissistic behavior because actually they're scared the person won't like them. So they might use pickup artist tactics, negging, or just courtship tactics that aren't entirely genuine. They might initially be really great about, picking you up, driving you places, paying for meals, but then get lazy about it later because it was just an act to get something. Um, what was the question? Did I answer it?
Are they even capable of experiencing love and intimacy?
Mm, that is highly debated. I've had it's funny, I have some mentors, like, in the mental health field who say, "No, a narcissist is not gonna have a healthy relationship ever, and they're probably not even gonna go to therapy because they think nothing's wrong with them." I wouldn't say I wouldn't say it's impossible, though. I think if someone really has narcissistic tendencies and hates it and wants to work on it, that and actually does the work, they can have a relationship. It may be a difficult one, and it may be with another narcissist. It may just be they should just date each other.
That never ends well. One of the examples get married to another narcissist, and the court has been going on for the last 5 years. They're suing the shit out of each other, and that's all that's happening. Like literally threatening each other. And what I was asking is like, are they even capable of feeling love? Or yeah, relationship, they are not capable of that. That's 100%, right? So it can be a very temporary thing, but in general they are not. But what happens during this love bombing phase? Is it that they mirror how you want it or how you behave, or they try to give you what you want to see and to experience, to get you hooked and to turn you into this narcissistic supply? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. Can narcissists love? I think it's an immature form of love, almost like the love of, like, a little child, like, "I love you, and to me, that means I want you to give me everything, and I want all the attention." There's an attachment. They do form bonds, they do form attachments. I would not say they don't feel love, but they're almost stuck in a childlike state in terms of their ability to express it, in terms of their ability to actually listen to another person's perspective, to imagine themselves in their shoes. That is limited. The feeling of love may be there, but there's challenges expressing it in a mature way.
I totally agree with you that emotionally they are not mature. Their maturity level is like a child, right? So he can be a grown up man. He can have a very high IQ, think very fast, know how to do a lot of amazing things, but it doesn't add to this emotional maturity at all. Yeah, and about the therapy, the question is how they even get to the point of going to therapy if they never think that they are wrong.
Often a partner will encourage them to go to therapy or a family member, but you are right that a lot of narcissists would not even go to therapy because they would think it's always the other person's fault if there's a conflict in a relationship. And so that's frustrating that narcissists are probably most in need of therapy and least likely to go. And a lot of therapists work with couples where there's a narcissist, and the focus is more on helping the one who's not a narcissist see what's happening and stand up for themselves and possibly get out than it is on actually changing. A narcissistic person can change their behavior if there's a goal they have that it's obstructing, like if they really feel like, their partner might break up with them. They can have that motivation. It's just very difficult to find it.
Maybe some advice for people who are victims of narcissistic abuse or the ones who are still struggling to, cut ties and break free from this trauma bond.
Yeah, one thing narcissists might do is to shoot down or isolate you from other people in your life who might tell you to leave them. That's a typical tactic in abusive relationships in general. So I would say be really careful about anyone cutting you off from your friends or family, telling you not to talk about them. Please confide in people. Please talk to your own therapist. Trust your friends, trust their advice. If something feels off, even if you love the person, if they are keeping you awake at night because you're replaying scenarios, should I have done this? Should I have done that? And they're making you feel bad, or you're angry with them and you can't express it, or they won't listen to you. Trust yourself because it is easier to get out sooner than later. And if you're angry, it's for a reason. A narcissistic person wants you to think you're angry because you're an angry person. So don't buy into that. If you are angry, it's because of their behavior. And if you bring it up and they keep gaslighting you or keep saying it's your issue, that relationship isn't going to work and you're allowed to walk away and it doesn't make you a bad person. They're the bad person who wants you to think you're a bad person because it's actually their issue.
Do you think that narcissistic people make history or not?
Well, Donald Trump he is most likely a narcissist. There is a trend. There's a lot of very rich and famous people sort of claim their right to power because they're narcissistic and they think they deserve it and they've been told the world belongs to them. Do they make history in a good way? Likely not. They're likely not the most admired figures in history.
Yes, so just a reminder, guys, Alexander the Great, Joseph Stalin, Napoleon Bonaparte, and as you mentioned, Donald G. Trump are most likely narcissists. As with politicians and as with your sexual partners, please don't lose yourself because some people are dangerous without even realizing what they are doing to you. And, my narcissist always was telling me, like, I hurt you the most because I love you the most, right? How fucked up is that? So you don't want to be in this situation. And if you start feeling that something is off, trust your gut and learn more about what it is the world out there, right? What kind of personalities are there? Because I think the psychology classes or therapy sessions is something that everyone can benefit from. And thank you, Susanna, for your community service, for the job that you do, helping people to move through those difficult shifts in their lives. So we are very happy to have you here. And we are in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, California. And just a reminder, tomorrow there'll be a big day for this country, but it has to be also a peaceful day. And as you guys can see, there is no war zone here. The studio is still here. Me, Susanna are still here in bed with Kate. And Susanna, how our viewers can find you? Any projects, any sites they might want to
Yeah.
check out?
Go ahead and go to my website, www.susannahweiss.com. That's spelled SUZANNAHWEISS. Or find me on Twitter, Susanna Weiss, on Instagram, Susanna Wise, WISE. Yeah, and I'm taking clients as a therapist and a sex therapist. So reach out to me about that. And I also have 2 books out on women's empowerment, Subjectified and Eve's Blessing, which you can order on Amazon.
We will leave links for all of the above in the description of this video. And please stay safe, stay empowered, and I'll see you next time in Bed with Kate.